right. Welcome to the first ever episode of Future Rock Legends podcast. Now, this is going to seem ridiculous to some people, but that's kind of just been our journey through this.
Yeah, is people just kind of thinking we're crazy and that we're doing something ridiculous, and then it kind of always seems to work out.
Yeah, it's like that a little bit of, me just going too far. Everybody's like, oh yeah, Nick's always just got to take it to the next level. He's just always got to push it to the next thing.
Or I'll never understand fully what it is that we're doing, and then it just kind of makes sense all of a sudden.
Yeah, and you've gotten to the point of trusting me.
Yes.
And just being like, okay, he might not be able to explain himself, but he's proved himself enough.
Figure it out eventually.
So this whole thing is essentially about our children, Brian and Ella.
Yep.
And our both amazement with them, our, just confusement at this point over what to do with them, because they're already on the verge of being better musicians than I am.
Right. Already past me.
And I want to keep stoking that fire, and I want to have other people realize that there are things that you can do at early stages that some people may call crazy,
right,
that we believe have completely changed our children's trajectory for their musical career. Now, obviously they are, very naturally talented as well.
Right. They come from a line of musicians, if you will.
But we were able to really find some of these things early on and
kind of hone in on them.
And I'm fortunate. I have a background in music. I played in a band. I was a lead singer. I played tuba all through college. Went to school for music education for a bit. So this isn't new territory for me.
Right.
But it's a lot different when you're trying to teach your own children how to play music versus teaching somebody else's kid how to play music.
Exactly, yeah.
And it was super frustrating. It is still super frustrating for me so many times. In fact, the family band name that we just came up with, right, is probably annoyed because Dad is probably annoyed.
Yep.
That's the best way to describe it. But it's important for me to be as real as possible when talking about this, because I need people to understand that, like, it's not all roses.
Right.
And rainbows, and it is very frustrating at times because these are children that are incredibly smart.
Right.
We constantly have to engage them. There is no downtime, right? There's no like,
hey, they're just going to go off and play by themselves, unless it's video games.
Which there's only so many video games you can do, right?
Or, letting them play so many video games for so long before you're like, okay.
So we had to figure out how can we keep their attention on music and continue to let them grow without annoying them to the point to where they hate music, right?
Right.
Like, we didn't want to be...
absolutely nothing to do with it. So.
We didn't want to be that family that's like, you have to practice 30 minutes a day. And
right.
I would rather be the family that encourages them to practice when they want to. And then maybe one day he puts 4 hours of work in.
Right.
Because he's just really jamming and he's grooving.
Right.
That is kind of what we're trying to do here, though, is figuring out where to go with our children's musical talents and how we can continue to grow them in a safe place and find other people to help grow with us.
Right.
So part of this podcast is going to be us interviewing other musicians, hopefully some musicians' parents. One thing that we were super inspired by was Virginia Grohl's story.
Yeah, from
Cradle to Stage.
From Cradle to Stage. I loved that book. I truly enjoyed it, and kind of like comparing how some of these kids grew up. Maybe not even necessarily in a musical family, but they just kind of like found this little like love, and their parents just kind of like pushed them in that direction. So I genuinely loved that book and was able to compare our kids to theirs.
This episode that you're going to listen to is going to be about the early stages of Brian and Ella learning music and how we were able to recognize certain things that they are able to do. We're hoping that through this episode, you'll be able to listen and say, hey, I've seen some, comparisons with my kid. Either my kid is just now hitting this stage, or my kid hit that stage and now they're doing this.
Or
we would love to...
And I missed it. And maybe you can help reel them back in.
Exactly. There's so many things. And I feel like music to me has been the biggest part of my life in general. Like it's been everything for me. And I know that my kids will essentially be able to have a job forever, right? Like
Right.
when the AI comes for all of our
Wait.
jobs, it's not coming for live music.
Well, yeah, that's true. But like, musical writing ability, maybe.
Sure, whatever, but nothing is going to steal away
True.
the live performance.
That is true.
So my kids are going to have a job forever.
Yeah.
Entertainment is never going to go away. Being able to stand up in front of people and
Having
speak in
that
your mind,
confidence to, yeah.
because music, confidence in music exudes everywhere, right? Like it turns into you ordering at a restaurant for yourself, or being able to have the courage to go up to a waiter and saying, "Hey, you got my order wrong," which our kids have no issue whatsoever.
With telling them specifically what it is that they want.
In the most polite way possible, too.
Right.
So that's what this episode's going to be. I encourage you to please reach out to us if this has inspired you at all, or if you have something to share with us, if you'd like to talk to us. This is something that we've been talking about doing for a long time.
Very long time.
But we consistently feel like we are
crazy
because everybody wants to think their own kids are amazing, right?
I mean, we are not, any different, but then we just started seeing these little things, and then you ask other parents and they're like, no, my kid has nothing to do with that, or, oh, they've never once done something like that in their life. And you're like,
I think the culmination of this whole thing, which made us kind of finally start it, was they finally got to do their first open mic night.
yes.
And it was our first time, the three of us on stage, and
like in a real place, like not just in our living room.
I've been dreaming of that since like they were born, essentially. And it happened exactly as I dreamed.
Right.
Like that little girl got up there, she started singing, he started playing bass, we hit harmony, we all played together, and then the entire crowd went fucking nuts.
Yeah.
Because everybody's coming up to us like, that's something that, like, I'm going to come back and I'm going to see you guys famous one day.
And they were like, hey, I need to get your signature, because they are going to be famous one day. And we're like, yeah. Like, I mean, not that they're not,
it was just,
but, and nobody believed that it was their first time ever doing it. They were like, they've done this before. We're like, this is their first time ever doing it together as the trio. Like, Brian had done stuff with like a band that he had done at a studio, but it was very much in the background with that.
This was our thing, though. This was a full creation between the three of us. I allowed him to have his say. I allowed her to have her say. This is something that we came in, we created together, and we gave that energy to the audience.
Right.
And the kids fucking felt it, man.
Right. I mean, as a parent, I could tell the things that they needed to work on. But overall, as a very first performance, it was incredible.
Are you ready?
I'm Ella. This is Brian, and my dad is probably annoyed. That's what he said to say. Old man turned 98. He won the lottery. Then died the next day. It's like a black cloud.
But like in the audience, you could definitely tell.
And let me just go ahead and throw this out here too, because you're going to listen to the way I talk, and I don't want to edit myself.
Right.
Our kids, the way that we speak with them, we obviously speak to them like children, but I don't censor myself in front of them.
Right.
They're aware what words they're allowed to say, what words they're not allowed to say. And they're actually allowed to say those words if it's in a song.
Right.
Because
the artist,
within reason, I'm not trying to have them drop the F-bomb nonstop, but we believe that those words, are expressions. They're not necessarily, always bad. They express things. So
right.
If I drop an F-bomb or something while I'm talking, this is me expressing myself. I'm not trying to be rude. I'm not trying to make this to where your kids can't listen to this too.
Or that you can say these words.
Yeah, but, listen to me, and this is my way of telling you my full truth, because if I have to start editing myself, you're going to get a much
different version
of this podcast. So just throwing that out there. Let's start with Brian, and he's our oldest.
Yeah.
He's 10 years old.
Yep.
And he started music. We started noticing music in him very early, right?
Incredibly early.
He was super verbal at a young age, like 18 months
If not earlier.
or earlier, he was speaking full sentences. And again, it was one of those things where like everybody's like, wow, he talks so well. And we're like, yeah, whatever. Everybody does that. But
We realized, no, not every kid is like able to tell me exactly what it was he wants in a full sentence. It's like they point and make a noise and you have to kind of guess it. Like
he picked up
very much
very
what
quickly.
he wanted, and he knew how to tell us what it was that he wanted.
I remember after the first time we watched Frozen with him,
Yes.
he would sing Let It Go. And it was like full lyrics to the whole song. Like he had memorized everything.
Let it go. What are you doing? You take the iPacer?
You're singing. I'm recording you. You sing?
You let it go. Let it go.
I
Don't care what they're going to say. With the storm.
One thing that we'd always done with both of them from day one is just we listen to music and it's not just on in the background. It's something we pointed out to them.
Right.
We'd say, hey, listen to this song. This is the Foo Fighters. This is Dave Grohl. Dave Grohl is the one that's singing. Do you hear his voice?
Right.
Can you hear the drums? Can you hear the bass in this song?
Right.
Ooh, isn't that guitar part cool? And then we would repeat those little parts back to them to where they could almost like piece that song back together and be like, oh yeah, the guitar's doing this. And we weren't doing it on purpose.
No, it was just we thought those parts were cool, or we just genuinely
We
loved.
genuinely shared our passion of
Right.
these songs. And I mean, the amount of history that I know about music in general, right? Like
It's pretty.
it would come on and I'd be talking to my 2-year-old about the history of Nirvana. And like he'd be listening and everybody else would be like, you're fucking crazy. But
But then
I'm telling you right now, this kid knows it.
it's this party trick. We'd be like, hey, like we'd be, somewhere with a group of people and we'd be like, hey, Brian, who's the drummer in Nirvana? And he'd go, Dave Grohl. And we're like, all right. So who's the lead singer of the Foo Fighters? He's like, Dave Grohl. Like, duh. Like, does not every 2-year-old know this? Like, but it was just something that he knew. And like, I remember when I was pregnant with Ella, he was 2 when Ella was born. And so all the appointments leading up to that, we would get in the car and I could barely get that boy strapped into his booster seat before he's yelling for the Foo Fighters, the Foo Fighters. Cause like that car wasn't even on and he was already, we are listening to the Foo Fighters, Mom. Like it was pretty awesome. And just to the point where I'm like, okay, enough Foo Fighters.
And that was when
Like-
the Foo Fighters Sonic Highways album was out.
Yes.
So we were listening and we'd be like, oh, Brian, this is the Tennessee song or this is the Washington, D.C. song or whatever. So he would know, like, he would request the, like, city, essentially, instead of the song name when he wanted to hear something.
He didn't know the song name, so.
But that kind of started our whole thing of realizing, okay, he was recognizing songs and he was recognizing them quickly. Like within the first few notes, he would know what the song was and
Right.
he would start telling us who the artist was. One of the ones that I really remember was Susan Vega, Tom's Diner.
Yes.
Both kids just recognized that from Fall Out Boy.
Right.
And they're like, oh, they're playing Tom's Diner.
I don't think I ever put that together.
So they recognized the sample from Tom's Diner, Susan Vega,
Right.
in Fall Out Boy when that came out.
Right.
Because we were listening to the 90s at the time, or
We always.
one of those stations on XM.
Right.
And they were consistently playing Tom's Diner. So they both immediately came out. We're like, what kids know who Susan Vega is?
Right.
Like, not to mention Tom's Diner is, I mean, it's a
good.
it's a song.
It's a song.
But that was like, okay, this is a little weird.
Right.
That they both were so excited about it and they both recognized it. So we started doing this thing called a challenge playlist where we put together all of these songs and we would basically be like, whoever can quickly tell us, you raise your hand and basically, whoever buzzes in first, let us know what the song name is and what the artist name is.
Right.
And those kids both, Ella being 2 years younger than him still,
Was able to keep up.
able to keep up with him.
I think the hardest part for her was that he had 2 years on her.
Yeah,
but
he's faster, but
Right.
she knew them.
he would just do it to, try to beat her, and then he'd be like, and then she, well, not all the time, but then she would jump in and be like,
She has her own credit. And that little girl cannot be taught anything. We'll talk about Ella in a minute. Let's get through Brian.
Go back to
So after we get through this playlist thing, we decide I've always wanted to get him into some sort of guitar or whatever. We've always had a guitar around.
right. Oh,
And people called us crazy, but when he was 18 months and your dad, who has always been incredibly supportive, and your dad is also a bass player.
right.
We've got his little setup back here.
Yeah.
But your dad was like, hey, what should we get him for Christmas? And I was like, man, you should get him a guitar.
Right.
Like, it's going to sound crazy. You might think I'm stupid, but like,
Don't get him
don't get him a toy. Get him like an actual like nylon string guitar that he can just beat the fuck out of.
Right.
And that he can get comfortable with. I want him to be able to walk up to a guitar and feel so comfortable with it to grab it however he wants and just not think twice about it. Yes, it needs to be treated respectfully. That can come later. I just want it to be something that's comfortable, not something that every time he walks up to, we're like, get away, get away, get away.
Right, like, don't touch. Like,
I wanted it to be dragged around. I wanted it to be crawled on top of. And your dad understood the assignment, as he always does for some reason. And he got it.
Right.
And I give him just as much credit for, his musical prowess as we have, because if it wasn't for that, I'm telling you, the kid would not be nearly as comfortable.
Right.
I'm not saying that he was a virtuoso at 18 months.
No.
He beat the shit out of it. He dragged it around the house.
He
crawled on top of it.
head and was
Our rules
dragging it around.
where you don't pull the strings.
Right. You don't pick it up by the strings.
And you don't play with the tuning knobs. And every time he'd do that, we would correct him. Other than that, he could do whatever he wanted with it.
Right. And he would sit there and watch TV and just be like,
Yeah.
like just beating the heck out of it. But
Very good.
Yeah.
Now remember, you play right here, Brian?
but he was making noise. He was kind of
He was
learning
get a rhythm with the strumming, even though those fingers didn't know what the heck they were doing. They didn't even know to touch that fretboard. But he would basically strum it, and you could hear it. And by the time we got back to Virginia, he was around 3,
when
and
he ended up with that.
we were big into Wagon Wheel at the time.
Yes.
And he liked the Old Crow Medicine Show version.
Right.
But Darius Rucker had just
Dropped his
version too. So the kid was hearing it nonstop, and they had a preschool talent show. So he's like, I want to go up and sing Wagon Wheel.
So he's 3 years old, and
I'm like, whatever, man.
talent show. All these kids get up there and they're doing all. Well, he was the first one.
He was the first one because he had no fear. And
Yeah, they like, who wants to go first? And I think his music teacher, Mrs. Sterling, knew he would have no fear. So she was like, hey, Brian, why don't you come on up? So he just walked right up there and sat down. He goes, hi, my name is Brian. I'm going to sing you a song. And then
let's go ahead. We can put that video.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do for us today?
Play guitar.
Okay, let me get you one.
I want to play on the twice.
He's right-handed, right, Dad?
Left-handed.
He's left-handed.
Yep.
Okay. Is that right?
Yep.
That's what I thought. That's what I was told. All right. Just a minute. We're getting closer. All right. This is Brian, and he's going to play guitar and sing for you. Right? Does it fit in here? Oh, snaps in. All right.
Hello, my name is Brian. I'd like to play a song for you.
And I've watched that video so many times. I love it. So after that, we're like, okay, obviously he's got a little bit, going on. And we told him that, hey, next year when you do this talent show, if you learn,
because he didn't actually know how to.
You didn't know how to play guitar. I was like, if you learn,
he was sitting there pretending, and he was singing. So like he was, I mean, obviously truly singing, but like he had the like idea, but he had no idea what he was actually doing.
So I used to work in a music store, and a buddy of mine taught ukulele, Anthony Garagosian, or Anthony James Band, if you know the Northern Virginia area. I've known Anthony for years, and I knew that he was patient enough to handle my kid.
Right.
But I also knew that my kid only had
so much
attention to give because he was the youngest age that Anthony would take.
Right. Like I'm pretty sure he was still too young.
4 or 5. He was right before he was still too young, but Anthony was cool with it. So Anthony was able to teach Brian a few chords, teach him how to kind of fret on the ukulele enough to where Brian could actually change between chords.
Right.
And we taught him Achy Breaky Heart.
Right, by Billy Ray Cyrus.
And what I was impressed with is that he automatically locked in to the measures. So he knew the counts automatically in his head and when to change the chord.
Right.
Because I would try to tell him, okay, nope, we're going to go to C, G. And he automatically, within the first time, he already knew when to change.
He could just feel it and hear that tonation was a little bit different.
So we have that too. We did a little talent show
with
at Music and Arts, and we can post that video here too.
We try it?
Say something into it.
Say something.
Hi.
All right, go ahead. What do you say?
Hi, my name is Brian. I'm going to play a song for you. I made a ukulele.
Go ahead.
Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart. Just don't take it, understand. And if you tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart. Just don't take it, understand. And if you tell my heart, my achy breaky heart.
All right. Yeah.
So after that, he obviously went back, did his little preschool thing again. I think, he did it for preschool too.
He did it for preschool because all the moms were swooning because he was legit. Because if they knew what he did the previous year, they knew the change that had happened in the last year and was able to see that he learned something over the last year. So
it was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Okay, what are you going to do for us?
My achy breaky heart on my ukulele.
Okay, achy breaky heart it is. Oh, wait.
You can tell the world you know there was no girl. You can burn my clothes while I am gone. And if you tell my friends just what a fool I've been, and laugh and joke about me on the phone. Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart. Just don't think it understand. And if you tell my heart, my achy breaky heart, might grow up to be a man. Woo.
So
we had this plan for them because the next year was supposed to be the first year that they
could do it together. Yep.
And then COVID happened, so it never actually happened. But we had this huge plan for the two of them to get up there on stage and do it together. And
we never got to it.
Never got to it until just the other day.
Yep, absolutely. So Brian's next part of the journey, he lost interest in ukulele. I had to let Anthony know that we were going to stop for a while and we were just going to kind of continue other avenues. And I usually let all of his teachers know ahead of time that we are not committing to any instrument.
Right.
We're going to flit around. I'm going to let him learn every instrument. If he wants to learn this, we're going to stop doing it and we're going to go there.
Right.
This isn't about the teacher's ego. This is about my child's musical journey.
Right.
So I think Anthony understood. We moved on that Christmas. We ended up getting a piano, and Brian immediately took to the piano. And I was like, all right, well,
Quickly.
let me go ahead and find another buddy to teach me, or teach my kid piano.
Right.
So the first person I reached out to was a woman named Jacqueline, who I had known for years. Her husband, Galen, is also a teacher. I love them both. They're awesome people.
Right.
And Jacqueline is much more structured.
Right.
And I thought that was going to be good for Brian at first. And I think it just kind of like, Brian learns very quickly.
Right.
So he doesn't like having to repeat things
Or go back
and do something again. So I think we did a month or two with Jacqueline, and then we ended up basically being like, hey, he was fighting us on it. He didn't want to do it.
Yeah, he didn't want to practice. He didn't want to learn anything.
So I was like, all right, well, I'd always made a promise that as soon as he stopped showing interest, we would
back off.
swivel.
Right.
Find something else. So I reached out to another buddy of mine, Marcus White. I've been friends with Marcus and his twin, Michael, since middle school. And Marcus, I remember, and Marcus, if you ever listen to this, you can correct me on my story, but I remember in 6th grade, he started playing clarinet. And he couldn't read the friggin' notes, but he could hear it.
Right.
And he was able to play from ear.
That's wild.
And I was like, he started playing piano in Chattanooga. I think he went to music school. I mean, we're not like super close, but we probably track each other enough, So I knew that he would both answer my call and was the right person to do this, because I was noticing some of the same, similarities in him with my kid. And I was like, so many people have been turned off of music because they couldn't read notation, right?
Right.
I didn't want that to be my kid. I knew that my kid had the ear.
Right.
I knew that he had the visual acuity to,
And maybe that would come later.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. But like, let's not just stop him now
Because-
and say, hey, you can only play simple songs because you can only read simple songs.
Or, you
His
have to
hearing-
go back and learn basics.
His hearing is far more complex than his visual,
Right.
learning. So right around that time, Ready Player One came out.
Yes.
And Brian had gotten to watch it, and the intro song is Jump by Van Halen. Dun, 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 dun. And he wanted to learn that, and Marcus was like, yeah, sure, I know it. And he taught it to Brian in one lesson, and Marcus was like, dude, I've got adults who have been working on that for weeks that haven't been able to get it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And I mean, Brian played it nonstop. We'll put the video of him playing it.
And we don't know if Marcus, I almost said the wrong one. If Marcus was just kind of like stoking our ego, or if he was like truly serious about it. But like,
We were impressed.
we were impressed. It's all I couldn't.
We struggle with it still. I took 2 semesters of piano in college, and I struggled with
Yeah,
it. So my 6-year-old all of a sudden being able to play it was super frustrating to me. And then we were like, okay, cool. Well, let's keep going. So the next week, I think I had him learn Pretender by Foo Fighters,
yeah.
which is also pretty complicated. And Marcus was able to learn that one by ear, and then showed it to Brian by ear. So it was exactly how I wanted him to learn it,
Right.
essentially. Shortly after that, Brian lost interest because he found Fortnite.
Yeah.
And I explained to Marcus, hey, we just kind of lost interest. I'm not going to try to push it. And
I'm sure we'll come back to it eventually.
yeah, and, I'm glad he was cool with it, obviously, too. I knew he would be. He's a parent also. But like,
Right.
you just never know, So we left it be. And Brian just kind of walked away from piano and really didn't play anything again until he started bass.
Yeah, when he was
9.
8. No, I guess he was 9.
9.
Yeah. It was a month after he turned 9.
Right.
Regardless, yeah.
Yeah, it was, he started in June.
Yep.
So,
It was right after school got out.
yeah.
And we were like, dude, you cannot be playing video games all summer long. You've got to find something.
And I'd bought a miniature bass a long time ago because I'd always wanted him to learn it, but he just
Right.
wouldn't touch it because it was like dad trying to show him something,
Right.
right? So we finally signed him up for this Groove Shack. He had his first teacher, Billy Chapman, was really good at explaining to Brian how to touch his fingers to the fretboard.
Right.
And he explained it the same exact way that I explained it, but because he's not
Is it
dead, Brian actually listened, and within moments. It was just like a light bulb went off, and the kid just fucking got it.
Right.
We had him playing "Come Together" by the Beatles on month 2 of him playing bass
That's hard.
with a full band.
Right. That's hard.
That is hard. We'll go ahead and we got the video footage of him playing "Come Together" with his band. We can put that up.
3, 4.
So he's playing with a full band, not 2 months after learning how to play bass. And it's like, what the heck?
So we switched him shortly after
Getting into the band
from working with Billy, because Billy, I think, is a little more guitar oriented.
Right.
To working with somebody who is more bass, because Brian really wanted to start getting into slapping and tapping and all this kind of weird shit. And I was like,
Okay.
all right, man, whatever you want. So that's kind of where we left it with Brian. I'll leave it there. I mean, Brian and I work constantly on bass. Brian also sings, and we'll get a little bit into that. But that's kind of our intro journey with Brian. And obviously Brian is impressive, but Ella is like,
she's that sleeper.
I like to think of her like an X-Men mutant child that hasn't figured out its powers yet. Like, you can see that shit bubbling. You know what I mean?
Every once in a while, something will slip out, and you're like, what?
And you're like, oh, is that what it's going to be? But
and then you're like, what? No.
She can do so many things. That mind is absolutely incredible.
Right.
And she is me. Like, if we have to compare our children, you are most similar to Brian.
Right.
Ella and I are the same person.
Right.
So Ella is able to hear harmony. That's kind of like her claim to fame right now. Like, she's got a beautiful voice. She can sing too, like just sing lead. We're going to continue and keep talking about Ella and kind of go into hers too. But I kind of feel like this is a good place for us to end our first episode. It rounds it off with Brian, and then people can go into the next one. I don't want to blur the two.
Yeah, you want to keep them separate.
Yeah, I feel like they each have their own journey.
Right.
And even though their journey is obviously combining.
And they are connected, but they are also very much on their own different paths.
Yeah, I think it's easier in the long run for us to be able to, like, separate these episodes and, give them their own,
dues.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you enjoyed this, please make sure that you, follow us. Set this to, automatic download. Leave us a review. Interact with us, wherever you can. And be on the lookout, because the next episode should be dropping here within the next few days.
Yeah.
And we're going to keep pushing this. This is going to be an active podcast for us that we are trying to continue. So we're going to start booking guests and stuff like that too. And who knows? You could hear from us within a few days. You could hear from us within a few weeks.
Or you may never hear from us again.
Never hear from us again.
Who knows?
But the goal is to continue pushing and to help our children achieve new heights and hopefully help other people's children do the same
and if
thing
if you leave a positive feedback review, we will tell the kids, because they love hearing the positive.
Yeah, it's that positive feedback that just keeps them going.
Right.
And it's you really can't hear enough positive feedback.
Exactly.
So thanks again for listening.
Thanks, guys.
And hopefully you guys got something from this.